When I went undercover to investigate the shoe industry, I learned something pretty interesting from the Dick's Sporting Goods employee. I learned about an NFL player I had never heard of before called Mack Hollins, and he is known for going barefoot and kind of famous for it. He's an NFL wide receiver, played for the Buffalo Bills, and recently was traded to the New England Patriots. So I did some research. I found an interview here, and let's see what he has to say about going barefoot.
Some games, but to work with all these guys, and I'm always excited for that.
Give us some backstory when it comes to Barefoot.
Oh,
Look at that. 11 seconds into the interview. He just changed football teams, changed, got traded or signed a deal with the Patriots and left Buffalo. 11 seconds into the interview, the very first thing they want to hear about is running barefoot. So it just highlights how unusual this is, especially among pro athletes. And it kind of takes it from something that was considered fringe type behavior to something that is mainstream NFL, mainstream pro sports as it gets in the U.S.
it started about 6 or 7 years ago. Obviously, I guess it started when I was a little kid, but
Yeah, that's a great point. Running barefoot is not some new trendy fad that someone thought up and came up with. It's something we all started as when we were kids, running barefoot. Whether inside, your first steps you took were probably barefoot. Many kids, at least in this part of the country, in this part of the world, and everywhere that I've been, when run out in the summertime barefoot, playing barefoot out in the yard. It's just something we grow up with as children, and then eventually kind of get conditioned out of it through kind of our social conditioning and what's acceptable to wear shoes, and kind of get into a rhythm that every month or so you get a new pair of shoes, every couple months a new pair of shoes as they wear out. But you don't really need them. It isn't some new novel revolutionary thing. It's something that we all did when we were younger and then just kind of moved on from. But that the ability to do that exists. You just kind of got to um, reacclimate yourself to moving barefoot.
restarted 6 or 7 years ago. Met some trainers called Melbourne Muscular Therapy out in Australia. They showed up. I flew them
Right. So I met some trainers that are training that way out in Australia, which is interesting. I think a big thing that gets overlooked on why barefoot running has kind of become a niche, or it's a fringe type thing, is because there's nothing to really sell you. You saw, maybe a decade ago, barefoot running became popular only because there were barefoot shoes, which, if you're wearing shoes, you're not barefoot. That, it created a product that they could sell you and market. When, people ran into injuries, overuse injuries, and got injured from running in barefoot shoes, that kind of died off, but not because barefoot running was a fad, because it's not. It's the default human condition. That's what humans are built to do. That's what we all start doing as kids, and then we get away from it when we're wearing shoes. So the ability to do that, it's just a natural type thing. But I think there's two psychological reasons for that. One is, the marketers. If there's nothing to sell or nothing to push towards you, it's not going to get hyped up. There's no thing to really sell you unless you have something like you hear there's a special training program or group of trainers that are advocating for barefoot training. That's a way to monetize it and make something like that popular. And then the other flip side is, it's not just people selling you something. There's a real psychological impact on people who like to buy things. When you buy something, it's low effort, but you feel like you're doing something contributing towards a goal. So if there's a gadget or piece of exercise equipment or some new type of shoes to buy, people buy that and then they feel like they did something. They get the little dopamine hit, and not have to do any work. Any of you who have seen the whatever exercise gadget and different places that serves as a clothes rack know exactly what I'm talking about. But it's both sides. People don't want to do the work and like to be able to buy something. And with barefoot running, there's nothing to buy. It's just go for a run, do the work, and your body will reward you. So that's hard for people to reconcile with, I think.
out from Australia to Philly. They showed up, and the way y'all look at me is how I was looking at them. They were walking around Philly barefoot,
Yeah,
and I was like,
totally
I might have
unusual.
sent the wrong guys out here. But that was their philosophy, is being barefoot and kind of getting back to your original ways of movement. That grew into me training barefoot all the time for about 2 years, 3 years, and then probably in the last 2 or 3 years, I kind of went to the what's the point? One less thing to pack. Now the
Yeah, once you realize that, hey, these are optional, you don't really need these. Once you condition your body and you're used to moving that way, it does kind of open your eyes. Like, why do I need these? They're not necessary. You start to realize that, especially as you build up your foot muscles, your ankle muscles, your calves, your Achilles. You start to realize that, hey, these truly are optional. And in some instances, I may be limiting myself when I'm training with shoes on, because that foam is doing a lot of work that my body was naturally made to do.
bags under 50 pounds, like I'm saving money. It's really it comes all together.
Yeah, saving money in travel luggage. He's not kidding there, but huge money savings in buying shoes. You know, running shoes or any type of shoes you're training in. Every couple months people are buying a new pair of shoes. Some people every month they're switching out a new pair of shoes. That that's a huge expense, especially when it's something you don't really need and it's not really necessary. But for the most part, people don't even ask if it's necessary or even think about it. It's just kind of assumed that it's something that's needed and required, and doesn't even really give it a second thought. But sometimes it you can really find some pretty good insights when you start questioning some of these like basic things that we kind of just assume for as fact.
Buffalo, so now like this is easy for you and New England. You already dealt with that one.
Um, yeah, I mean the cold is. I live in South Florida in off season.
So talking about the cold, kind of two things there. Kind of you can tie it back into the money thing, because I know cold exposure and barefoot running are not the same thing. There is a little bit of overlap. There's people like me who like to get out in the snow and the cold and do cold plunges, and then also run barefoot. But they're very distinct things, and they're not the same. But as far as like the cost savings that I was talking about a little bit ago, and why no one's really pushing barefoot if there's not anything to sell you because there's no motivator there. I saw the same thing with the cold plunge industry. A couple years ago, when cold plunge was becoming a really big popular thing, everyone was saying, wow, how can I buy a cold plunge tank? I need to get this new tank, or I'm going to buy a deep freezer and turn it into a tank. Like, everybody wanted to buy something, but was overlooking, hey, I live right by a lake. You can just go in the lake for free and go in the cold water. When I mentioned that, people looked at me like I was crazy. Um, because there's nothing to buy. It was totally free. It's just do the hard part. Actually, get in the cold water, and you don't need to buy anything. It goes into the same psychology where I want to buy something to feel like that I'm doing something without having to do any of the work. And then nobody is pushing, hey, just go in cold water for free, because it literally costs you nothing. They've got to sell you a tank or something like that. It's the same thing at play. That you know sometimes the natural free stuff works, but there's no incentive for anybody to push it, and it doesn't give that easy free dopamine hit because it's hard and can be uncomfortable.
I think you can only get so used to the cold. But below
Yeah,
35, I'll put shoes on.
fair.
Um, there's a few times where I like no matter what temperatures, I won't put them on. But below 35, I'm barefoot, but I'm not a dummy.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah, so that highlights that, barefoot and cold exposure is not the same thing, especially from someone from South Florida. We can get snow here pretty early in Ohio, sometimes in October. So a lot of times when I mess around with getting out in the snow and the cold is more a product of my environment rather than actually just seeking out that cold and snow. It's kind of like, hey, I wanted to do a barefoot run and now I've got snow, so it's the whole life gives you lemons, make lemonade type thing. It's just what my environment is, so I go out in it, and don't let weather like that slow me down. But there are limits that you can get to, and listen to your body and pay attention to those limits. So kind of two things off that. One is, he doesn't fully articulate it here, but it's not only once it gets colder, the ground actually gets a lot more harsh when it's cold and below freezing. So it's not just the cold temps, but whether we're talking concrete, pavement, dirt, whatever the case may be, that ground is not as soft and it's much more harsh on bare feet once you get below freezing. And he lives in South Florida in the off season, and that's what his body's telling him. And that's one of the biggest things with barefoot running is you have to listen to your body and what your body tells you. If it tells you that this is too much, or we've gone too far, or I need to adjust something, you have to listen to that feedback. That's the number one thing that's going to prevent you from having overuse injuries, and that's what makes barefoot running so effective for improving your stride and your gait as far as overall running mechanics and performance, is because when you don't have any shoes on, you get that instant feedback. Like if something hurts, it's going to hurt right away. There's not that delayed reaction that, hey, I ran funny. Your body won't allow you to do that because it's going to immediately tell you the way your foot's striking that this is not comfortable. That's also why I'm a big advocate for going full barefoot. And especially when you're starting out, don't start in the barefoot shoes because those barefoot shoes, they cover that sensory feedback, which is essential for letting you know how far you can push your body without overdoing it and ending up with injuries like plantar fasciitis or some issues with your Achilles and things like that. Because we all start out running barefoot, but if you spent your whole life wearing shoes, those muscles have atrophied and you've got to reacclimate yourself and work up to it. But you can do it and it can be done. So one thing for you guys who have been longtime viewers of the channel know that recently we've been getting into barefoot running. Before that, we had ice rides, had mountain bike races, even some urban exploring around here in Ohio. We even explored a half sunken ghost ship, the only ghost ship on the Great Lakes. We also went down to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, did some investigation into the Mothman, did some interviews there. So we've had a wide variety of stuff on the channel. So what I really want to know is what type of videos do you guys want to see more of? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys out on the trail.